Well, hello everybody in YouTube land. Going to do I'm going to try to keep this one quick. And it's a quick review. So I've been doing some Swiss Army knives lately. But here is going to be more of a direct comparison. Is this one better than the other one kind of thing? And then looking for some feedback in case there's something I'm missing here. But before I get into that, go ahead, hit like, subscribe, share, comment, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll go from there. So I've been looking for kind of like the perfect EDC as far as a multi-tool. I don't like real multi-tools. I know pliers and all that Leathermans and stuff are useful, but I'm looking for something that is a knife first and foremost, and then also has some additional convenient tools. So I'm not having to hunt around for a screwdriver, a saw, bottle opener, can opener, Phillips head, things like that. So part of my criteria is, a knife like this, like the Victorinox Adventure, is great. This is actually kind of like a perfect EDC knife for most people because it has just enough tools, Phillips head, on all, tweezers, toothpick, can opener, bottle opener, things like that. It's kind of like, and it's perfect. It's slim, it's long, so it's like a decent sized knife. But you've got a nice slim profile and stuff. The liner lock's kind of wonky, but it does have a lock. So from a safety perspective, if you had to stab something, it works, although it's really kind of set up more for like a lefty because you can close it with one hand almost. But here it's kind of like you're pulling this way, but then pushing with the other blade, and you're just basically rotating it in your hand. So it's pretty much one hand opening and closing. So I already had one of these. This is the older Wenger style. They still make them. It's Victorinox. But this one has the locking blade with the push button here. It's a bit large for concealed, kind of pocket carry. So I was looking for something like this. I was like, okay, and I really like the Trekker because it only adds one layer to it, and they have a one-handed opening. But the non-serrated edge is no longer offered on the one-handed Trekker. So the next best thing I could find that matched the criteria I was looking for, which was a little smaller than this one, a little more in line with this, but one-handed opening, locking blade, and a decent tool set. And so I went with the locksmith. And it's great in most regards. And then I'm going to tell you why for this application for EDC, I don't actually like it. I've been playing with it all weekend, loosening it up, oiled the pivot with synthetic motorcycle oil, something that'll last and get in there good. And I've been sitting here for hours working it and loosening up. And I think I'm going to need to go back and go with the Ranger grip, with the larger one. And here's why. I like the idea of this, and on paper it seems like it could do what I want. It's a little thicker, so it's not going to be as discreet in your pocket, but if you got big hands, it actually gives you more grip. Here's my two main problems with it versus this, the Ranger grip, which is a Wenger design. This is not something Victorinox designed. Wenger, which was the other Swiss Army knife company, went out of business after a century or so. Wenger bought up their stuff, and now they have their name on it. And they've made a couple changes to it. If you go and look at the can opener, you'll notice it actually is upgraded to the actual Victorinox. So they're now actually using the same. But the things that they did keep were the different handle profile, slightly larger size, the grip panels that have these little inserts, the locking mechanism, the larger hole here, the jimping, the blade shape. So they kind of took what worked best with the Wenger knives and added in the couple pieces that were actually better from Victorinox. So I got the locksmith. And I'm like, okay, this is a little chunkier, but it's the same size. It's a little smaller than that. It's got the one-handed opening. It's got the lock. This is going to be good. Here's my two problems with it. If you hold it exactly right, opening it one-handed is not a problem. It's slow, and you can pull it over because it's wider, gives you a little more purchase. You can, as you see, I can close it with one hand. Not as easy, but it does work. Here's the problem. If you don't hold it exactly right, if you move it this much, if you're not exactly in the right place, what'll end up happening is you'll get partway out, it gets stuck, your finger slips. I've had several times where, because this just doesn't have as much grip, even though it's not that shiny plastic that the other Swiss Army knives have, it's still fairly smooth and a little bit, it's still slick compared to this. There's been times where I got it up part way and then it slipped in my hand and started closing my finger. Now, luckily, it hit my fingernail, so it didn't cut me. But had I been closer to the tip, just the tip, I could have very easily taken a nice chunk out of my finger. There's times where it's not a good deployment. It seems like they designed, I don't know if it's because it's too far away from the pivot. I don't know if it's because the blade is over and this blade really should be on this edge, on that first layer, not the second, just how this is on the first layer. The problem is it doesn't seem like a lot, but moving it over, let's see if we can get it here. You can see how far over that is compared to that being right on the edge. Now, from once it's open maybe and you're using it, it's like, well, okay, now it's more center of the knife. And some people like that rather than having the blade off center. But opening and closing it is really kind of a pain in the ass at times. I mean, I'm really having to grip and hold this in my hand so it doesn't slip or rotate, because I'm not just pushing up like a lot of one-handed knife. Take a your normal tactical knives. You're pushing up from right here with a thumb stud or something like that. Because this is over, my thumb is having to cross over this way a good bit and then rotate up instead of just pushing up. That makes a big difference. And so you have to really hold it tight and have it just right. If your hand's rotated or a little bit off, it just doesn't open smooth. And then, of course, closing it, you can do it, but this thing's really tight, and having to pull this one way and then push with the finger the other way, it's kind of a eh. When I do this one opens much smoother. You have the lock here, so you're never putting your finger in the way of the blade and then closing it. You literally just push that button and then close it. So this makes a big difference. It also opens with a little more authority. Nice clack of the lock, snapping into place. But this one is far less fidgety or far less picky as far as how I open it. This I open one-handed easily, like 98% of the time. This, it's like 60% of the time. 40% of the time I get it part way and then my grip slips or something happens and I get it part way up and then it wants to snap back if I don't get it far enough. And then I'm having to adjust my grip, and then I end up just using the other damn hand to open it. I feel like this knife wasn't designed to be a one-handed opening, but people want that, so they just kind of like, well, if we just take the existing blade and we just add a hump and drill a hole in it, that's good enough. And it really isn't. You need to design a knife. See, like right there, because it's small, if you don't get your thumb down in it like that, I went to do it, my thumb just slipped right off. So that's where it's like you have to be very specific, which to me kind of takes away from the convenience of having the one-handed knife in the first place. This, as big and clunky as it is, that elongated opening hole, the fact that it has that flat edge there that catches your thumb instead of here, your thumb just kind of rolling off. It's the blade's closer to your thumb, so it's more of this movement than an over and around kind of movement. Which again, when your thumb's moving around those angles, that's where it's likely to slip out of that little hole. Now, if you have little thumbs that kind of go down in there, maybe, but you look at the size of my thumb compared to that hole, it's very, like right there. I started opening it right now, it's really awkward to finish it opening. Whereas here, almost every time. The other thing, so we covered the blade, deployment, Wenger, hands down. They're not even in comparison. The Wenger is a much better designed blade. Where they positioned it, that hole, it's just a smoother operation. The other thing is obviously that lock. Having the push button there so you can close it without putting your finger in the way, as opposed to here, I'm doing this and then my thumb's now in the way, so then I've got to switch my grip. It's just a lot more movements. The other thing is that let's look at the tip themselves. One should stand out as clearly, I think, a better blade profile. They're both about as thick, although this is thicker towards the point, so maybe it's a little more supported out there. But when it comes to something like trying to open up like a hard plastic clamshell packaging, whatever, you're buying tools, you're buying something, and they're like anti-theft, and they're real, like you can barely, tear the damn things. They're super tough. And And so piercing it is a much more of a pain in the ass. That is actually a sharp stabby point. You can see that that is a much more precise point. There's also a little more belly to that blade. This blade actually slices a little bit better and it pierces a whole lot better. This is almost like when you're in school and you're doing arts and crafts and you had the safety scissors. And so they were like super blunt. So if you're running with them, which you should never run with scissors, you wouldn't, stab yourself. I mean, that is not. Now, if I push against that edge and then, yeah, it'll certainly, I've actually sharpened that. It's very sharp. But that point is blunt as hell. There is no, I'm wiggling it around, pushing again. There's nothing happening to my finger. I would not do that with that point. I will pierce my finger. So I don't know why they do it that way. It could be maybe cultural. They see it as a tool, not a weapon. They want it to be widely be able to be sold in many countries. And so when people see that, where okay, yeah, it's got a blade on it, and okay, it does lock, which even that's still going to be illegal in some countries. It's still, to them, it's a tool. It doesn't mean to be sharp and stabby. I maintain for EDC, there's lots of times you need to be able to stab through something, especially when it comes to like hard plastic and things of that nature. And I've read, is there a way to reprofile the blade or, things like that. And I hear some people saying, well, you could use the awl to spear through the package and create the hole. Okay, so now I'm taking this thing out, which again is kind of a freaking fingernail buster to get out because Victorinox is to use insanely strong springs. So I guess I could punch a hole with that after I break my thumbnail off opening it. And then close that and then come around and fiddle with that. And then I could put that in the hole and slice it. To me, that just seems like a lot of extra steps. It takes away the convenience of being able to, I've got this stupid package, I can't tear it. Okay, great. Click, slice it, put it away, slide it back in your pocket. So as big as this is, and while it is a big knife, I may just start carrying this. The only thing I may do is actually replace this with the Ranger Grip 78. I don't know why I ordered the 79 last year. I think I did it on Amazon. I think I did it by mistake. So I think what I'm going to do is I don't need a corkscrew. I think I'm going to give this to somebody as a gift or sell it or something like that. And then I'll go ahead and get the exact same knife with the Phillips head because I'm using Phillips head screwdriver all the time for stuff. So as much as, well, I guess I'm not bashing Victorinox because they're both Victorinox. So it's really Victorinox versus Victorinox, but it's the older Wenger style that I just find way superior for a one-handed opening. Now there I got it right, but you've seen before where I didn't. If I just grab this thing and I do it from here, I'm really paying attention to what I'm doing, and that's the point. I'm making sure this finger's here. I've got this finger here, so that it's kind of in those channels to keep me from moving it around, and then I'm kind of gripping it with that. But you see how just slow that is. And then, of course, the closing is, the same thing, much slower. That's just a much better experience. This is a better knife. It's bigger, but it's a better knife. What I will use this one for, I'm going to keep this one because I really do like this knife. So what I will do is I've got my Tops Steel Eagle, which is 1/4-inch thick slab of 1085 carbon steel, I believe. I think it's 1085 or 1095. Anyway, this is a beast of a knife. This thing is massive. So if I'm ever out in the woods or doing something, or it just goes in my bug out bag, this will make a perfect companion because it is one-hand opening, even if it's more finicky, but even if I'm out in the woods, and I open it two-handed, it still has all the tools of this, but instead of just having a saw, it also has a file and a hacksaw. And I think in a bug-out bag or an emergency situation, that's a really nice thing to have. So that is going in there. And this will be in my pocket for when I don't care about, how big the knife is. I just want a big do-everything knife that, if needed, I could push it into a defensive weapon. Also, there's jimping here. That was the other thing on here, is that when you look at that big goofy blade that we have, and they put the hole in there, yeah, you've got this ramp here, but it's so slick and polished that your thumb just rides right off it. I mean, if you're just doing a little bit of whittling or something, if you put any pressure on that, your thumb is just sliding off. Here it's at a little bit more of a steep angle. Now you're not choking up as much, but right there, your finger hits that jimping and you can really kind of push into something without your thumb wanting to slide. Here, as far as a thumb ramp, it's useless. Now, I could probably remedy that by taking a Dremel or a file and putting this in a vise so I could do it really nice and neat. And I could probably just make some jimping, but it would have been nice for them to have that because that is a pretty big thumb rest there. Put a little jimping on it, man. How much could that cost? That would make that really nice. Also, I noticed, you see how much blade play is in this one? This one's got a lot less blade play. So anyway, Victorinox versus Victorinox or Victorinox versus Wenger. I'm going to choose the Wenger. I'm going to replace this with, give that to a buddy or somebody. And I'll go ahead and get the Ranger Grip 79 so I can pick up that screwdriver. But yeah, it's bigger than that, but it's not so massive that I can't carry it. So, but it's a much better blade. So anyway, those are my opinions. If you can think of a way to make the other knife here, the lockpick, a better one-hand opener, and I've heard, well, oil it right, sit there for an hour and work it back and forth and get it to loosen up. It really is more just about the size and the angle and the fact that this hole is down way too far. It needs to be closer to the pivot. It needs to be a different shape, something that catches your thumb. The further it is from here, think about it here. The pivot point is there. That radius is going to go in an arc. So your thumb has to swing out and around as opposed to this being so close when you're pushing on that edge. Look at how smaller that arc is. My thumb's not doing this. It's doing a little whoop. And that is the difference. This was designed to be a one-handed knife. This was an afterthought. So I'm having to go through this big sweepy arc. And then when you do that, it wants to rotate and pull this out of your hand. It's just awkward. I thought I was going to love it, and unfortunately I don't. But it's a great knife, so that notwithstanding. Anyway, if I missed anything, let me know. Give me your thoughts.